y'all, and Happy New Year. Welcome back to the Winning Wednesday podcast. I am your host, Geneva Brown, and today's message is called God's Covenant, a promise for all creation. Before we start in today's message, I want to paint a picture of what a covenant is. A covenant is a formal, solemn agreement or promise, often legally binding to do or not to do with something found in law, religion, or property. And so in the book of Genesis, in chapters 6 through 9, we see God's judgment through the flood and his mercy through a covenant. God has instructed Noah to build the ark because he was going to bring judgment upon the earth due to widespread sin, which was going to be a flood. And this flood was total in scope. It would include every living, breathing creature outside of the ark. Those that weren't in the ark would perish. This detail, it's very important because it sets the foundation for our understanding and for the magnitude of God's covenant that will follow. And it wasn't for the first time that I've read the book of Genesis that I realized the total scope of this, that this covenant would also reach all living creatures. So after the flood in Genesis chapter 9, God establishes a covenant. A covenant in scripture is a binding promise initiated by God, not dependent on human action. And in Genesis 9, verse 8 through 11, God clearly states that this covenant was made not only with Noah and his descendants, but with every living creature, the birds, the livestock, and all the beasts that fill the earth. Those are the exact words that God said to Noah that would be included in this covenant, in addition to Noah and his sons. This is so significant because God's redemptive concern extends beyond humanity into all creation because creation was affected by judgment. Creation was also included in restoration. God's promises that never again will a flood destroy all the flesh of the earth was within this promise that was given to Noah. I want you to think about that because when God created the heavens and the earth, we don't know what all the creation or creatures were supposed to be like. But we do know that sin was in one of them, that was in the snake. But we don't know truly, was a lion meant for humans to be scared of? Was a bear meant for humans to be scared of? Or were we meant to all live in harmony with one another? Everybody knowing their place and their role and how we would need each other. So it bears to mind that maybe even the animals needed to be destroyed and restored for some reason. And we don't know the full picture of it. But what we do know is that everything that God created was able to receive restoration through the flood. So then God provided a sign of this covenant, the rainbow. When the bow is in the clouds, I will see it and remember the everlasting covenant between God and every living creature of all flesh that is on the earth. And that's Genesis 9, verse 16. The rainbow, it serves as a visible reminder of God's faithfulness. It teaches us that God not only makes promises, but he also establishes reminders of those promises. The covenant is described as everlasting, meaning it continues across generations. In fact, that is what he tells Noah, that this promise is not just for this generation, but it is for the generations that are coming after, which includes you and me. It was also going to be for whatever creation was coming after, because in that ark was every animal of its kind. Now we have so many different species of animals. So the fact that God knew that I need to restore this earth so that everything coming after it will have the opportunity to be in this restoration is so powerful. I don't even know if I'm even articulating it the way that I actually feel it in my mind and in my spirit. But I pray that you can understand that this covenant, it crosses generations, not just for you and me, but for every single living creature on the earth. So every time a rainbow appears, it testifies to God's unchanging word. The truth aligns with his teaching. Jesus explained that God cares for the sparrows and the crows and the lilies of the field in the book of Matthew, chapter 6 through verses 26 through 30. And these are just examples of God's reinforcement of his faithfulness and his provision that extends to everything he has created. So there's three things that we see in this covenant that God has with Noah. Here are these three truths. Number one, God promises are intentional and inclusive. Number two, God provides signs to confirm his promises. And number three, God faithfully remembers what he has spoken. So because God keeps his promises with creation, we can trust him with the promises he has spoken over our lives. Scripture affirms that God does not lie or change his mind. That's Numbers 23 and 19. His character guarantees his word. We as believers are called to recognize and remember God's faithfulness. Just as the rainbow points back to God's covenant, we are to look back and hold on to God's reminders that he places in our lives. So it could be that every time you see the rainbow, you're reminded of his promise, or every time you read scripture, or every time you hear testimony, or every time there's a prayer answer. That is your rainbow of God's promise to you, his reminder of his promise to you that he is faithful to his word and everything that he promised you will come to pass. In our life, the rainbow reminds us of this foundational truth that God's promises stand and he will do exactly what he said he will do. That is the Winning Wednesday word. If today's message has encouraged you, would you consider sharing the Winning Wednesday podcast with someone today? Thank y'all for listening, and I'll see you in the next one.